Welcome to Tech Brothers with Amir. Today we are going to learn how to create SSRS report when number of columns can change anytime in our object, such as a table or a view. So we have created a matrix report where the column group columns are created depending upon the values in that column. But we are talking something different here. We are creating a tabular report where we are extracting some column from a table or a view. But think about that later, the definition of that table or view change, and a column can be added or deleted. In that case, we want to refresh our report automatically. So it is not depending upon the columns group value. It is totally the solid columns or the columns coming from itself from the table or the view. So let me show you, and then we are going to go ahead and experiment and play with it and use some tricks to create this and make this happen. Now if you want to stop the video and read all these contents on the right side, go ahead and do it, and I'm gonna just perform these quickly. Let me take you to SSMS SQL Server Management Studio, and here I'm creating a view with these columns. So I have ID, salesperson first name, last name, product name, and item sold from total sale table. Let's create this view. Let's select the data from this view, and as of now you can see that we have these columns and data. So let's go ahead and take this one and create this report. Go to SSDT SQL Server Data Tools. I have SSRS project already open. So right click on the reports, add a new item. So report, and then provide name. I'm going to call this one dynamic columns. Don't mix this dynamic columns with the matrix because as I told, in that column group the number of column comes from the values itself. So in our case we are talking about the changes in the definition of object such as a table or a view. So number of column increase or decrease in the table or view, that's what we are talking about here. Add. Now empty report will be created. Right click on the data sources, add data source, and here we are going to call this one ds underscore sales. Use shared data source reference sales. So we are using a shared data source that we have already created here under the shared data sources. So you can go ahead and create to your database. If you don't have it, hit OK. Right click on the data set, add data set. So this is going to call dset sales. Use the data set embedded in my report, select the data source and paste the query. So we have select asterisk. So I'm using asterisk by purpose. So if tomorrow the definition of this object include or exclude some columns, I would like to get all those columns. So hit OK. And here you see those columns are available to us. Right click and insert and bring the table here. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring all those columns here. Sorry, totally went wrong. Control Z, and bring the ID here, bring the first name here, last name here, and then product name. To prepare this report, it took me almost couple of hours, and this is important report. I had been thinking about this one. So now our report is ready. So preview the report, and you can see we have ID, first name, last name, and all those columns. Think about that. A new column will be added to this view later, or a column will be removed. What happened to this report? So let's go back and make some changes. So I'm gonna remove the item sold. Let's remove the product name here actually. Now and add a new column called country. So we removed one column and added a new one, and we are going to alter the definition. Now our view should return the new column. So we have country here, and that existing column that was product name, that is removed. So let's go back to the report and preview the report again. If we go to design and preview the report, you will see no change. So that's also important. Sometime even you have made the changes to the objects, it does not display right away. So you have to hit the refresh button. So once we hit the refresh button, you see that for the product name, as we have dropped from our view, so we are getting a blank, and we are not getting the country name column at all, because we did not add that to the table. So we would not get, because as these are hard coded values, we have to drag them here. Next, even our view is getting the values from the our data set is getting the values from the view. Till as of now, even we refresh it, it is not showing the country here. So two things we have to do it here. First, we have to go to the data set and then hit refresh fields. Once we hit refresh fields, the fields will be refreshed. Hit OK, go back to the preview, and now you will get an error. So it is saying the product name you have used in the table, that does not exist anymore. So click here on the data set and take a look. Now we have country, but we do not have a product name column, and as the product name column is used here, so we are getting this error. Now one thing we can do, we can remove this column and then add a new column, and go ahead, that will work for us. So bring the country here. This is great. Preview the report, and country is coming right here. Let me check if I hit the recording button. It's almost 2 a.m. in morning, and I don't want to waste 30 minutes. So let me check if the recording is working. So yes, the recording is working. That's great. So let's go back to designer, and now what we need to do, we need to prepare a query and use some trick here, so we can exclude or include the columns in our view, and still we would not make any change in the report, but we will be able to see those columns. So we are gonna delete this part. First, let's go back to the SSMS SQL Server Management Studio, and let me show you a query. So this is the query we are going to use. As you can see that I'm checking if a temp table exists. So this is a global temp table, and I'm checking if that does exist. I'm gonna drop that one. So that's the very first thing I'm doing it. Then I'm going and declaring some variables. So I'm declaring object type and key column. So by doing what I'm trying to do here, as we know that in the matrix item, if we use the matrix item and we have the values in one of the column that can be represent as the columns. So instead of tabular data here, we are going to convert this one as our couple of columns here. So we will be converting, or we will be unpivoting these columns into the rows. So by doing it, we will be able to use the matrix item, and eventually this will be presented in the same structure what we see here, but there would be intermediate trick we are playing here. So first of all, we will unpivot this data, then provide to the matrix in SSRS, and that will also put that back to this format what we see right here. So if we add a column or drop a column, then it will be taken care automatically by using this query and matrix item in a report. Now let me show you the query I'm using here. So I have object name. You can provide your table name or view name, and then there should be key column. I'm using ID. So ID is my primary key here. Actually not primary key, but it is a unique value column for me. If you have a primary key, provide that. So when we unpivot, there should be a value, and those values, this value will be related to the unpivoted other values, so that by doing it, we will have correct values. Now Next part, we are declaring column names, and then setting is equal to just blank, and values, and then SQL. So next part, what we are doing here, we are selecting the list of the columns from the information schema dot columns view for this table, and excluding the ID. We do not need the ID here, and making the list of those columns. If you see here, there is another one where we are converting these columns to the varchar 100, because if there would be columns such as item sold is integer, and then we have first name, that's varchar, that's going to give us a problem where when we will unpivot it. When we will use the unpivot in columns, it's a conflict exists because of data type for these columns. So that's why I'm bringing two column here. So let me print that out for you so you can see the things like what exactly I'm talking. This query is going to be available on TechBrothersIT.com under SSRS reports, and I'm gonna put this in description so you would take a look, and just open that link if you will be interested. So as of now, you can see I'm making a list of the columns, and then I'm converting these columns to the varchar. So item sold even is converted to the varchar 100. So if there are different data types, we will be not having problem once we have converted them already. Otherwise, in the unpivot, we will get that error conflict happen between the two data types. Next, once our these columns are ready, we are preparing our unpivot query. We are saying select asterisk into temp table from this query. So I write this inner query. Here we are saying select key column, that's our ID, and then values. So all those columns, if you see that in the values, I showed you where we have converted those columns, they will be here from the object and as a derived. So this query will be derived query here, and then we are unpivoting it value for column names, and column names in, so we are using stuff and removing that 1 comma 1. Remember, you see the extra comma here. I could have done that before, so this comma will be removed there, and this is the values that I was talking about here. So we have converted them, and then we are printing the query, and finally we are executing it, and then we are selecting the data from the temp table, as I have put the data into the temp table. Why I have done into the temp table? Sometime in SSRS it does, even you have execute, it does not take those column names. So in here I can go ahead actually and use directly dynamic SQL and maybe remove the temp table, but then I might have to add those columns in SSRS by manually. So I don't want to go there, and if I have a lot of columns, I would be adding those columns in the data set, giving them name and all that. Instead of that, I will be just writing the data into the temp table every time and selecting from there. So that will bring the column names correctly in SSRS. Now we can go ahead and run this query right here and see the values. As you know that we have 11 records and we have these many columns. Now let's run this query and see what happened. And now we have 44 rows, and you can see for Amir ID is 1, and this is my first name, last name, and then item sold, and I live in a country United States. So these are the 4 records. They're converted from columns to the rows. So that's what we have now. That's great. Now let's take this query, copy it, and go to the SSDT again. This data set is no more in use. Right click and delete. Now right click on the data set again, add data set, and let's name this one the set sales again, and it is going to be embedded in my report and DS sales. Paste the query here. Now let's check this out. If even a dynamic SQL right here will do anything. So if I don't have this, let me comment this part and see if this brings the columns in this case. So if we refresh the fields now, so it is bringing a key column and values. So we have to provide some values and all that. Let's say hit OK. We didn't provide anything in the fields. It did not add any field. So if I go back to query, refresh field one more time, now I provide some key column. So let's say it is the items sold, and sorry, this is a variable, so it is the ID. If you remember values, let's say items sold. If we hit OK now and hit OK, still we do not see those fields. That's why I was talking about, okay, it is good idea to have this temp table, and then use the temp table at the end, select the data from there. Now once you have that one, you hit OK and hit OK. Fine, let's see what happened. Now if we will let me delete this one directly. I'm gonna create a new one with the SSRS. Sometimes it's a little hard. Deset sales and use embedded data set. This one, paste the query. We are not doing anything now. Hit OK. It need to run the variables. It is in key column. Okay, so and values, and the key column is ID, and let's say items sold. Okay. Could not create a list of the fields for the query. Verify that you can connect to the data source and that query syntax is true. The variable name key has already been declared. Variable names must be unique with the query batch or store procedure. Okay, so there are things that we have to take a look again. One thing I'm feeling somewhere, maybe I'm printing these columns, so that can also be that can also create problem. So let's take this back. Now let's select the query again. I removed the select statements. Now I'm gonna go back here, paste my query again, and refresh fields. Okay, hit OK. Fields, still it did not bring the fields, and let's see what happened. I'm gonna fix this one no matter what happened. We will together, and let's say refresh fields, and we have parameter values. So in this one, let's say we have ID. That's what I have, and items sold. Hit OK. Fine. See, even with the, I was expecting with the temp table and all, it should work just simple, you know, and but it's not working. So I know that one thing. Let me go back here and see one more time. We have temp table here, and then we have all these things. It's working, query is working, we are getting the values, but we know one thing for sure: ID, value, and column names are going to be static for us. So we can select ID, value, and column name. If that might help. In our case, we are going to get all these three columns always. So let's take this query one more time. This is annoying, I know, but sometime we have to deal with that, and hit OK. Still I'm getting this error. This means new data set. Let's give some different name. Dset. Now it should be okay. The last query is returning this. So what happened? We have another select query here, so we did not see that, and that could be the problem. So if we remove that part and say OK, now hit OK. Fine, and then still we have the issue. God, let's that's what I wanted to avoid. when it comes to write the columns by myself or create those columns. I'm going to take a look again. I'm checking this one. Key column is the ID, and that's already set. We have set columns preview, set this one and select this. Print is removed. Now if you run this one, this is just working fine here, but in SSRS it's giving us problem. Now let's go back here and say Control A, Control V. All right, hit OK. It's not bringing the fields though. Let's refresh and say okay, this time I'm going to provide the blank, and let's test. Could not create a list of the fields as query. You can connect to data source and queries. Okay, let me see if data source is giving us problem. So we have sales, and we test this connection. Test connection succeeded. That's not the issue. One more thing, there are a couple of ways go from there. Let's say we don't care about that. So now here in the data set, we go and say fields and add, we say add a field, query field, and this is ID, field name, and this is going to be ID as well. So now next one, let's double click here, go to field again, add query field, and this is going to be value, and field source value, and let's add the next one, and that's called column name. That's all I wanted to avoid, but that did not work for us. So that's one way. Now we can go ahead and create our report. Let's say we insert the matrix, and here one more thing I could have done, I could have converted the entire query as a store procedure, and that might help. And I have done actually in the last video. I did that, and that worked well. In this is also one way to learn how to add those static fields. In our case, they are static, so we are fine. Otherwise, if there would be an issue, we could have created the store procedure fine. Now in the rows, what I would like to show, ID, and then in the column name I would like to show column names, and in the data I am going to show the values. This is going to be detailed report. The column names, as we can see that now our column names has those columns, and they will become the column, and these will be the values and ID. So this is not going to be sum or anything. This is going to be detailed report. We are using matrix to handle that, as we cannot add or drop the columns in the table item in SSRS. So let's preview the report now, and as you can see, our report has all those columns: country, item sold, salesperson, first name and last name in the ID. But I'm not really interested to see the ID in this case. Let's say if I want to hide that, I can go ahead and delete this one. So I will say delete column, and here I will say delete column only. I do not need to say delete columns and associated groups. If I will do that, then my report is not going to run. It will throw error, and this is what I want to do. I still want to have the logic by using the ID on the rows, but I would like to just delete the column only, so it would not show me. So if you see row group ID is going to stay as it is. The only part will be delete the column. Hit OK, and you can see that it is still there, and but it is dropped from the columns. Now let's color this one, at least give some background color. Hit OK, and let's preview the report. Now you can see the report. Let me make this one small. We don't need this much space. Preview the report. We have 4 columns. So now if I will go back and make changes to my view, what is going to happen? Let's say instead of these 4 columns, now I will bring every column. So I'm gonna bring everything. So that's a lot of columns, and here I'm going to alter the definition of this view. and run the view. So we see all those columns, and as you can see that if I run this query now, it is going to give me all the records, and it is in Unpivot form, so columns are translated to the rows. Now in SSRS we are reverting back, so we are converting the rows values to the column again. So let's refresh. Once you refresh, and you can see that we have all those columns automatically come in our report. So the same way, if I go back here and I remove, let's say if I delete all the columns and I just want to keep a first name, I can do that as well. So I do not have to make any change in SSRS report. So in this way I am only having one column, and that's the salesperson first name. So if I go back here, refresh, I'm seeing only one column. So you see that there are tricks we have to play and to make it work. One last thing, let's go ahead and create the store procedure on top of this one and use this one in data source and see if that works. Create procedure dbo sp total sale as, and we say begin, and then we have to convert. At the end we say end. Even I'm not going to use these columns here, just to show you if it works or not. So I'm creating this store procedure, and now go back to our SSRS. If you guys want to go ahead, I just want to experiment this part, so just make sure it works or not. So I'm going to delete the data set, recreate the data set, and I'm going to use this, and here I'm going to use the store procedure, and my store procedure name is SP total sale. So that's what I would like to use, SP total sale, and the fields. So the fields are coming automatically. By converting that query to the store procedure just work fine. So that's another thing we need to learn. So it is saying, okay, this one table is referred to invalid data set. That's fine, because now we can go ahead and you can drop it and recreate it, because it was using the data set that was different name. If we would like to go ahead and drop it and create the new one real quick, so we can use ID, we can use value here, sorry, Control Z, bring the columns first and then bring the value, and then remember we deleted this column, not the groups but the column, and this is it. I know sometime it take a whole lot of time, and now if we go back and add more columns to the view or anything, it should work just the same way what it work in our query. So I'm bringing all the columns one more time just for the experimental purpose. Execute, and now we have all those columns in the view, but here we are using store procedure. If I run this store procedure here, I will get all those values in unpivoted form, so they are in the columns are converted to the rows. If I go back to report, and now it should show me all those. So right now it's shown only one. Let's refresh, and now we see all those columns. So this is great when you can create your report and make changes to the definition of table or the view, and you don't have to worry, go back to the report and make those all changes. So thanks very much for watching this video, and I'm kind of sorry it took a whole lot of time to create this report, and we did a lot of experiment, but I feel good about doing experiments and learning from there. So instead of I just stop the video and do the perfect video, I prefer doing experiments in front of you guys and do mistakes, so you can also learn from those mistakes and find out the solution. Once again, thanks, and I will see you guys in next video.